Hi Chris, how are you?
Good morning, Rod, and happy bank holiday weekend, as it is a bank holiday. I'm assuming you have a bank holiday in Wales tomorrow morning. I think we have the same bank holidays, don't we?
England and Wales generally do. Scotland does their own thing.
Yeah, they are very similar, but occasionally move one or two around. That's what I've learned because we now have a Scottish company where I work. So it's episode 223, it's 3rd of May, and the weather is damp.
Yeah, damp and foggy, I think is probably fair to say. There's a bit of a sea mist with me.
I'm gutted. We were sat in the garden yesterday. It was beautiful, and then it started raining.
Well, there's some sort of concert going on here at the moment. It's called Tunes in the Bay, and they've built a big stage down by the beach, which when I was going to work on Friday, I saw and I thought, oh, it's Tunes on the Bay again. I don't know who's playing. I don't know what's going on. I should probably take more interest in what's happening in my local area. But yeah, Tunes on the Bay. They won't be having the nicest day of it this morning.
Oh, it's rubbish, isn't it? We need some good weather. It doesn't even have to be hot. Just pleasant.
I think we have had good weather, to be fair. I mean, I haven't been here for the whole week, but certainly there's been... I landed on... When did I come back? Thursday. And I thought, wow, it's nice here in Birmingham.
Yeah, I think we have had good weather, but you kind of want it for the weekend, not for the week when you're working.
Here we are, real-time follow-up. Friday they had JLS, I've heard of them. The Vamps, The Wanted, Dick and Dom, I remember Dick and Dom from my kids. CBBC. Last night was Scooter. I'm pretty sure they were a German sort of techno band.
No idea.
Chaos Brothers, don't know any of them. Lisa Lashes, I think I've heard about. I think she's a DJ.
I feel really old. I don't know any of these.
And Sunday, I'm not even going to read them out because I haven't heard of any of those people. Anyway, there you go. There was something going on.
Well, if you haven't heard of them, I definitely haven't heard of them.
Don't run yourself down, Chris. I think you're far more with it than you think you are.
I think
maybe
history
not.
Shows maybe not. Should we get into follow-up then?
Let's do some follow-up. So last week, or possibly the week before, we were saying how the memory shortages and SSD shortages were beginning to affect Apple. That certainly seems to... at the higher end, if you were going to order a Mac Mini or something like that, then they were supply constrained. Well, things seem to have got worse because as of, well, I think this is on April the 30th, so just a couple of days ago, 9to5Mac reporting that now you can't get the base model Mac Mini either. They've, in fact, entirely removed the SKU from the App Store.
Yeah, so I think there's two things here. One, they've got shortages. They announced on the investor call that Mac Mini and the Mac Studio are going to be supply constrained for months. And then they've removed the base configuration with 256 gigs, pushing the entry price to the Mac Mini up to $799. So yeah, quite interesting what's happening here. Because to be fair to Apple, they'd actually done a reasonable job of maintaining prices and stock for the last, I don't know what, say 6 months. So I think they've done all right to weather the storm, but it feels like now they're starting to feel the storm a little bit.
Yeah, there is no escaping for it, even for a company as big as Apple. I mean, I suspect the very, very base model, most people will probably put in at least one upgrade. They wouldn't buy the absolute cheapest one in many cases. But here we see on the UK Apple Store that it starts now from $799. I think it was $549 before.
Yeah, something like $599. It was a very good priced machine, and it still is. I mean, I've got one, you've got one. It's a fantastic machine. I'm using mine all day, every day for various tasks. I love it. So no regrets buying it. And even though it's a year old now, and obviously there's a new one around the corner, it's still quite a good machine to buy.
Well, it's still the best Mac Mini you can buy, and I think you and I both went for the Pro one.
Mm-hmm. I went Pro because I wanted to keep it for a little while, and I didn't know whether I'd want Thunderbolt 5, but I feel like I should get Thunderbolt 5, and you got that with the Pro chip. I also did put a reasonable sized hard drive in mine, which was quite expensive. Only 2 terabytes, nothing crazy, but 2 terabytes is quite an expensive upgrade in Apple terms, even before the RAM and storage crisis.
Yeah, I think I went for more RAM, or maybe it just came with 24 gigs of RAM at the Pro chip. I can't exactly remember. I think I went for the 1 terabyte version.
Yeah, so I did 2 terabytes. I think I did 48 gig of RAM. I don't know why. I can't explain my life decisions. But I really just wanted a machine that I could use and enjoy, and not... I hate I hate buying something and then going, I should have splurged the extra 100 and got that. And so I kind of spec'd it to a point that I thought was fair. And that's where I got to.
Yeah, just news for watchers of this podcast. I've switched off my ad blocker for the purposes of getting Rotten Tomatoes and things in. So as I scroll through some of these web pages, there'll be ads.
Chris throws his arms up because he went and got all the Metacritic links for his films for this week to appease Rod.
Well, to appease Chris, Rod went back through and put them all back to be Rotten Tomatoes links, so there is no panic here.
Beg to differ, but I can sort that while we're going through the show. Shall we move on to the next story?
That's really weird. Yeah, okay, let's move on to the next story. I thought I'd gone through and changed them all, but there we go.
It doesn't matter, does it?
Doesn't matter. Anyway, if you wanted the cheapest Mac Mini, you can't have it. You've now got to go for the Model Up. That still seems to be in stock. I don't know how long it will take if you actually go and order one at this point.
It is still good value, though. It is a cracking machine.
It is,
You
but
can't get away from it.
if you think, what's the extension of this? You know, the MacBook Neo is now also supply constrained. We've seen cutting at the bottom end of this market. There are sales apparently on MacBook Pros if you want to go and get them at the moment. You can get them at better than normal prices, a couple of $100 off in some reports. But it is a bit of a worry if you were looking to pick up some new machines this year. I got to think the M5 is going to come in, and obviously some of the RAM intended for that will be in this. Other way around, for this will be in that. But yeah, bit of a concern.
In some ways, it's quite interesting they launched the Neo at all, given how supply constrained and with costs rising, some of these components are. So
They've still got to make their money.
It's still, yeah, that's true. That's true.
Moving on, we had a main show a couple of weeks back about the growth in solar and the potential of plug-in solar in the UK. Well, there's an article in Ars Technica this week about the growth in solar worldwide is the largest ever observed for any source. And I suppose on one level that's not surprising. It's free energy, after all. Well, free once you've paid for the initial costs of it. But I've certainly observed a lot more solar panel and solar farms and things in this part of the world. And there are wind farms and things, obviously, but solar certainly seems to be an absolute explosion. And this article in Ars Technica seems to sort of back that up.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. You're seeing it, aren't you? A lot on houses. You're seeing lots of solar farms, as you say. Kind of, to me, all new buildings should just come with this built-in. Like, why aren't we doing that? It's good tech. My son just last week went to a local supermarket and for £30 bought like a portable solar set, I guess, that you unwrap, and then it's got USB-C and a couple of USB-A ports, and you can use it to charge stuff. And it was £30. And for a kid in his 14 that wants to try this stuff out, it's quite a good entry price, I thought.
Yeah, I think that it's an excellent entry price. So you can get a full-on solar panel you could for 91 quid. I'm sure they've gone up again now, but it's not exactly as portable as what you can get. So, I mean, the cost of this stuff is just being driven down really hard, and you can see from this graph that solar PV makes up, the biggest chunk of all these sort of renewable sources that we're seeing. It's interesting in class nuclear is renewable, and coal certainly isn't, and oil certainly isn't, but these are obviously just energy generation sources rather than renewable ones. But yeah, solar PV, it's nice to see it making up most of that. You've got wind when the sun goes down. We've got batteries now. If it weren't our other worldwide events, I'd be feeling quite encouraged about all this.
Yeah, no, agreed. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how the world adapts. Are we going to end up with companies going back to old ways of fuel, which is what we're seeing, aren't we, with the current administrations? When are we going to get back to doing renewables? But let's not get into politics.
Let's not get into politics, and we'll talk about AI instead, because
that's
better. We all love a bit of AI. So right from the start, Microsoft went in hard with OpenAI. All of its Copilot technologies were built on OpenAI's stuff, basically. And it's interesting to look at the growth of Microsoft, that after Ballmer, the next CEO was Satya Nadella. Satya Nadella was from the cloud side of the business. He prioritized cloudy stuff as much as anything else, and cross-platform things. Satya Nadella is the guy that brought Microsoft Word and Office and things to the iPad, for example. Almost day one of release of the iPad, you could have Microsoft apps on there. So he obviously was looking across things rather than just where Ballmer and Gates came from, which was, we're going to lock out the competition and we're going to go from there. Not to say Microsoft won't lock out the competition, but he appeared to give the nod that more things are going to be more open. One of his bigger decisions was in about 20, I can't even remember the date, let's say early 2020s anyway. He went into a deal with OpenAI to embed their things, and Microsoft very quickly pivoted to the Copilot brand being not only something that you'd get in your Office suite or in your Notepad, although they say they're taking that away, but also an additional key would appear on your keyboard, which was the Copilot key, and they went hard on it. They also, in the form of Azure tokens, gave OpenAI cloud compute abilities in Microsoft platforms. So that was one of the things, rather than giving them lots of money in it, essentially at that point, although they did give them lots of money as well, is they gave them some free cloud compute technology as well. It's all got a bit wrong, I think, between Microsoft and OpenAI. OpenAI obviously are like that meme of the guy looking at the other girl walking by while he's with his girlfriend, because they've been looking at Amazon, they've been looking at other things. They probably feel a bit burned by Apple choosing Gemini rather than their product as well. They see Anthropic getting lots of things. And the long story short is OpenAI has broken out of the exclusivity agreement with Microsoft. That's quite a big deal. And sort of to revisit where my sort of initial mindset on this was going, is that Microsoft almost missed the internet because, they had to bring Internet Explorer late to the party. They definitely missed mobile. They seem to be on the cusp of doing quite well in AI here, but if this partnership falls apart and Microsoft don't have their own models that will compete with this could be quite dangerous for Microsoft.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's interesting, but it just means that OpenAI can do stuff with Azure, but also they can now go over to AWS, Google, and do stuff with those clouds. So it is quite interesting. It's opening it up. Is OpenAI's focus going to shift? Are they going to, are they still going to do everything on Microsoft's cloud? It's curious, isn't it? Because they did seem very wedded. And it was always a bit weird of why haven't Microsoft just bought OpenAI in the early doors? You've got into partnership with them. You're sitting on their board. I was amazed they never bought them. But you're right. It's curious, and I think Microsoft have obviously left the charge of AI and integrating it in. Apple, as we know, are laggards. Google have come a little bit late to the party, but appear to be late, but actually done an Apple move, turn up late, but actually nail it. I think it's fair to say they've done a really good job of bringing Gemini along now. Have Microsoft come too soon and got it wrong, which is kind of what they did with mobile. They were in mobile early doors, but who wanted a start menu on their phone, and it just didn't work. And then their rebooted effort of Windows Phone was too late and just didn't have the market penetration it needed. So it is curious Microsoft's play here of what's going on.
I mean, it's OpenAI as much as Microsoft, isn't it? But
no, agreed. But is this going to? But Microsoft seemed to have fumbled it a bit by forcing Copilot on everybody, and people going, I don't want it. So it's curious how this is going to work out. Have you seen a laptop with a key on it yet? I haven't seen one in the wild.
No, I haven't either. Saying that, I don't generally look to that. I'm not that interested in Windows laptops, it must be said.
Concur.
And I suspect, where we would be looking at laptops, we wouldn't be looking at them with Copilot keys on anyway. It's difficult, this, isn't it? Because if there is a bubble, and most people seem to agree there is an AI bubble, that when it bursts, there's going to be a lot of people left with a lot of hardware that have, spent money on data centers, RAM, forward provisioning. Most of Microsoft's recent profits, if you look at it, is about building data centers. If you've put all this infrastructure in place and there's nothing to actually run on it in any great sequence down the line, and your partners leave you like OpenAI because they're going to AWS or something like that, you could be left out of a huge amount of pocket, billions out of pocket. And even for a company as big as Microsoft, that could eventually sting.
Yeah, completely agree with you here. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out, but is that bubble ever going to burst? Or are we just going to keep throwing more money into it?
But it can't, surely the diversity in the AI space can't go on forever. There can't be Anthropic, there can't be OpenAI, there can't be DeepSeek, there can't be Claude, there can't be Mistral and Lumo and all the other ones. All of these companies can't continue to exist. If you look at what's happened in the tech industry before, it tends to settle down to 2 or 3 major players, not 5 or 6 or 7. So some of them are going to go burst. Some of them aren't going to need all that capacity. And then what's happening in China? The DeepSeeks and all the rest of it aren't going to go away either. So I genuinely don't see how it can continue to grow in the way that it is. And if you look at the history of, computing, you go down to 2, or something completely different comes out of left field and it just goes away. So I can't see how we can continue in this way, particularly as it impacts all other areas of society. Chips and hard drives and SSDs and all these things are being affected. That will affect the car industry. It will affect the greeting card industry. It's already affecting the computer industry. It's affecting Apple, and they've got more purchasing power than anyone. How can that continue?
Yeah, I don't disagree with you, but it's going to be curious to see how it distills down, I guess, into the remaining constituent components of 2 or 3 big businesses. I was reading the Apple book recently. What was it called? Apple, the First 50 Years. And you forget how many computer companies there were in the early doors of, like Atari, obviously HP, and, making various operating systems. And it was like new operating systems, new ways of interacting all the time. And then we've kind of coalesced on largely Windows, Mac and Linux. They're like the three. And obviously now in the mobile space, it's really just iPhone and Android.
Yeah, I mean that does seem to be the pattern. If you go back to transport and all the rest, think of all the airlines we used to have at the beginning of the airline industry. Britain alone had 5 or 6 different carriers: British Caledonian, British Overseas Airways, Flybe, blah blah blah. There were loads and loads of those of them, and we've consolidated to a couple of big flag carriers left, your British Airways, and then companies like EasyJet and Ryanair. And you think, this is the way the market goes, and it's actually a good parallel. If you look at the way the market's going, look at what's happened in America in the last couple of days with Spirit Aviation. Their original low-cost carrier, which is what inspired Ryanair and EasyJet, has just gone out of business because of the fuel price increases.
Oh, is that right? I didn't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, so that's a huge amount of aircraft, and I think they had at their peak 17,000 employees, and they've just fired the last 5,000 employees because they've gone out of business. That's a horrible thing for anybody, that because of a war that was started that was none of those employees' faults, and all they were trying to do is move passengers around.
Yeah.
That model taken to the AI bubble, the same thing could happen. We already kind of see it happening in some industries with people firing because of AI. What happens when AI itself goes bang?
And everybody gets re-employed.
Well, hopefully so. Do you want to tell us about...
Agreed.
Yeah, let's move on. We've probably spent too long on this one topic. Do you want to tell us about Palantir?
Oh, you know my love of any time you put Palantir in the show notes, and I cry a little bit on the inside. This is an article that I don't like, but I'm guessing it's the truth. We've got to assume there's some truth here. But Palantir employees, this is the title of the article, are talking about the company's descent into fascism. It's not good, is it, if you work for a company and you're thinking, are we a fascist company? And they're basically talking here about where Palantir started in 2001, and then obviously, they were trying to help the government combat terror attacks following the 2001 terror attacks in New York, and then how more recently, obviously, Palantir is aligned with the current administration, and various comments made by their CEO, which I think we reported on a couple of weeks ago. I'm trying to remember now. And that's not good, is it, if you're an employee of a company and you don't align with the values that your CEO and, I guess, board are demonstrating? That's a tricky one.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Palantir have proven themselves to be paragons of virtue and sanity. I mean, as you say, that memo that came out from their chief executive officer, which was like a manifesto, an evil manifesto from Jerry Maguire. Please see about, I think it was 220, our episode where we talked about that. I quite like this Ars Technical article, starting with the famous Mitchell and Webb sketch where they go, "Are we the baddies? Have you noticed our caps have got little skulls on them?" It's an absolute perfect thing where you take that moment for your average employee to realize maybe what's going on. They haven't coated themselves with the glory. They call themselves after the evil orbs from Lord of the Rings, as I've said before. I think they might be the baddies, but if you're a cool tech employee and you're looking for a cool tech firm, maybe on the surface that's what this is. They do data aggregation, they do a bunch of clever things with data. It's not a million miles away from what we do in the university, in my part of the university, in the health space. So I don't think we do it in an evil way. We do it for the benefit of society, and maybe if you're a Palantir employee, the initial sales pitch of what you're doing is you're helping organizations make sense of their data. That is kind of straight up and down fair enough. But when you go, oh, hang on, maybe we're actually helping people get bombed, then it becomes more of a problem.
Yeah, I'd imagine if you're an employee at Palantir and you took your job in isolation of, we're doing a tech problem, it's actually probably quite a good challenge, because that's what a lot of programmers and data analysts want. They want that challenge and getting the result, and I would imagine that's quite rewarding. But it's when you look at it in the context of what you're doing, and where the company's going, what they stand for, that might be challenging.
Yeah, I think it could be. People have got mortgages to pay at the end of the day. You can understand why these things go on, and Palantir exists for a reason. It was funded by the CIA. You can go back; it was venture capital funded by the CIA, and it's obviously very good at what it does. I don't think it excuses some of the other things that it does, but it's a company, and yay capitalism, I guess.
Yay capitalism.
Well, this is the way. Let's move on to something. It is more pleasant because it's a good old standard tech story like we would have covered once upon a time. I don't know if this is quite a gate, but this is an article that came up in 9 to 5 Mac last week from Benjamin Mayo. talking about his experience of his iPhone Air just shutting down. He plugged in the USB charging cable just after it shut down and couldn't do anything to turn it back on again. He went off, he's been around Reddit posts and done all sorts of things, and it's happening to iPhone 17, 17 Pro, and iPhone Air models, where you plug the cable back in. Chris is going to flash his iPhone up on the screen in a minute, because it traditionally flashes his orange iPhone at the screen every week.
Love this thing.
I know, you've mentioned it a couple of times, mate. But have you had this problem where it shuts down and by hook or by crook you can't turn it back on again?
No, I haven't. I generally don't run out of battery, and I only charge mine to 80% most days, but I'm generally pretty good that don't run out of battery. I mean, I don't use my phone a lot. I would imagine this is more prevalent on the Air, because the Air's obviously got a much thinner battery, as is widely reported. I was a bit shocked to read this, and I was like, that must be quite heart attack inducing. I can't turn my phone on. I need my phone for MFA. I need it for travel. I need it for bank. I need, all these things I need it for. Did you read what the solution was?
Stick it in a MagSafe charger and leave it for 15 minutes.
Now, I use a lot of MagSafe stuff, so that's fine. But there's a lot of people out there that don't use any of that. And, how often do you see people with MagSafe? Barely ever. How often do you see people with USB-C cables? All the time. So, not sure about the solution for that. And sometimes when I travel, because I travel quite light, I just take a USB-C cable because I can charge my iPad and my phone with it. I try and pack light. So, a bit worried about that one.
And it's faster. I mean, this is it. Even a good MagSafe charger is only 15 watts, I want to say.
It was. I think that might be the case, actually. But I use it overnight. I just chuck it on the side, forget about it. And I've got one here on my desk. So when I'm just, on a call like I am now, I just put my phone on there and just leave it going.
Yeah, mine's plugged in with USB-C, rammed into it because my USB-C port is failing. It doesn't charge as well as it could. MagSafe works, however, MagSafe is A, slow, and B, inefficient. You lose a little bit of volts because of the heat that happens when it... So that might be a choice people don't... Yes, it's convenient. You can just... The magnets are great. You just click it on there and off it goes. But if you want a quick amount of charge, then you stick a USB-C cable in and off you go, particularly when you're traveling. So I don't think this is a great bug. Presumably other iPhones must have suffered with this in the past and we just haven't noticed. And maybe it is because the iPhone Air has such a small battery that it is getting hammered more than the others. I don't know.
I found it odd, and apparently it doesn't impact all phones, but can impact basically the latest round of phones. So super curious. So
if you've got it, A, there may be a software update at some point that fixes this, and B, maybe get yourself a MagSafe puck, because that seems to be the only way to figure it out.
It kind of makes me want to put my MagSafe puck in my bag when I travel.
Yeah, it's quite sizable though, isn't it? A USB-C cable, as you say, you can charge almost everything else you've got with it, and you feel like you're doubling up. And when you are trying to go light, I bought for my travels recently a knockoff cheap MagSafe battery. It's 5,000 milliamp hours, which means it will charge my phone up just about once, I think, given the size of my battery and what you get with heat loss and all the rest of it. Gosh, it's slow. I mean, it works, but gosh, it's slow.
Yeah, you kind of forget how slow some of these things are. But I've purposely engineered my world to all be USB-C. So all my devices are USB-C. So I know I'm good when I go anywhere. Yeah,
my only remaining things with Lightning are my AirPods Pro, which are the AirPods Pro 2 with a Lightning case, which I can charge my watch charger or a MagSafe charger. I'm trying to think of something else. Oh, and a remote control for my Apple TV, because I've got an older generation Apple TV.
I do have a couple of those, and I'm waiting for a new Apple TV to come out, and they will slowly phase out of my house.
I think I don't have any Lightning cables left. I gifted one to my daughter. I think I might be in trouble next time I have to charge my Apple TV remote.
Well, follow up at the end of the thing, you're going to see I bought a device that requires Lightning to charge. So,
interesting.
Talk about that at the end of the show.
Interesting. Should we do some news?
Yeah.
So the big news in the Linux world this week has been this terrible vulnerability that's become exposed across all Linux distributions. This is not a simple thing. It even affects Windows subsystem for Linux as well. It's called the copy fail exploit. It's not quite a 0 day because it was a known about thing, but it was released last Wednesday, and you can basically get all kernels, including version 7, all the way back to 5.10. So this encompasses most Linux distributions. Basically, it has been patched now. If you haven't patched your Linux kernel recently, go to your distro thing and run an update. If you've run Ubuntu, that could have been a problem because they had a massive denial of service attack going on over the last 3 days, apparently by some Iranian-sponsored group. So all Ubuntu.org was down. All of its package repositories was down. I think it's back up now. If you used one of the regional ones, like the UK one for Ubuntu, you were fine. But if you were trying to hit the main Ubuntu repositories, you weren't able to get this patch, which isn't great either. It was very simple patch. It was some sort of escalation script within it, a little bit of Python code, 754 kilobytes, and you were up and running, and you had complete root access to the Linux distribution. So really nasty. So get out there and patch, folks.
That is the theme, isn't it? Patch everything. If in doubt, install the latest patches. It's most time you won't even know it's done anything, but install the latest security updates.
Absolutely. So this is a nasty one. And, it's not like Linux is unique in this. We've had Mac nasty ones. We've had Windows nasty ones. This is just what happens with computers.
Agreed.
Moving on. We briefly covered this in the follow-up, I think, about Microsoft and its spending on data centers and things like that. Microsoft has spent its capital expenditure, $190 billion this year, with $25 billion of that due to rising component costs. So that's what I was talking about before when we talk about data centers, that this is what's happening even if you're a very big company. That last quarter, Microsoft spent $32 billion to bring additional compute capacity online. That feels like a lot of money.
It does feel like an inordinate amount of money. You can see why they've been trying to push Copilot to get back the costs, but maybe if they weren't pushing Copilot to do stupid things, maybe we wouldn't need to invest so much money. It feels a bit of a dog trying to chase its tail.
But if you think about it, Microsoft charge for things, and you're more in the corporate space than I am, so it's probably in the region of $30. Let's say that you are a client access license for SQL, you have a login, you have a Teams license. Presumably, they're going to put another couple of dollars on top of that for deep Copilot access. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I'll be honest. We haven't really acquired any Copilot licenses, and it's normally a lot of what Microsoft do is a bolt-on unless you buy the big licenses for everybody. The company I currently work for is not in that world to buy the big licenses, so we're just buying bolt-ons here and there. But the problem I have with it is I can get Copilot for users, I can get Copilot for Teams meeting rooms. I'm like, where do I need my Copilot? It's got so complicated now.
But all of them will be a per dollar per user per month cost over and above what you already pay per pound in this country, obviously. But A, we're squeezed. B, the price will go up. C, there's not a great real evidence, backload that users are even going to use it. So even if you were sort of optimistically say 20% of Microsoft's users were going to start paying that additional per dollar per client per month user license, that's not going to recoup $32 billion in your last quarterly spend or your proposed $190 billion for the future. Talk about the AI bubble bursting. This feels like it's in that way,
Absolutely mental.
It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. Peppering our stories with things that are quite good fun, after that being just an interesting one for the amount of money that companies spend. This interesting story popped up this week about some crazy hacker has managed to get Ubuntu running on your PlayStation 5. You up for this?
No, part of me would be, but part of me is like, I don't know what that gets me. Why would I want to run Linux on my PS5?
Because you can.
I know, and I guess I've never been in that world of tinkering. I'm always amazed by what people can do, but I just don't have the chops to do it. I guess my brain's not wired that way. But fair play to whoever's done this.
So he's called Andy Nguyen, and he's called online The Float. This only works with the original fat PS5 console, which is what I've got actually. I've got plenty.
I sold mine.
Why? What? You're. Sometimes you baffle me, mate. Anyway, should you choose to, you can install Linux on there, and I just think this is quite cool. If you remember way back when the original PS2 development kit ran on a flavor of Linux, and you actually had to install Linux on your PlayStation to do development for games.
And I think you could put a hard drive in the back of it if you bought the Ethernet adapter.
Yeah, you could. So I just think this shows, A, how flexible Linux is, that of course it runs on everything, but B, if you have got a PS5, it's quite a powerful device to have lying around. If you really needed a server, and let's face it, we're all a bit memory constrained at the moment, and you weren't using your PlayStation 5 for games very much anymore, it's an option.
And there aren't a lot of new games out on the PS5, as I think we've been covering a little bit, that are that enticing. So you're right, this could be a good use for it.
Well, you could install the latest patch to Gran Turismo and play with a Renault Twingo if you really wanted.
Oh my good lord.
No, not a feeling.
Do you think they've really mapped all the current cars that they're now down to scraping the barrel of cars to put on.
Yeah, it does feel like a bit of a stretch. Anyway, I think this is quite cool. But there's a link in the show notes to the actual GitHub project if you want to install this on your PlayStation as well. I think I said a couple of weeks ago I put various things on my Wii to sort of mod it so I could, do stuff like that with it. And someone got Mac OS X running on it. So I just think these things are cool, that you can make use of hardware you've already got. I mean, this is the joy of one of the reasons I got into computers, is because they're flexible, universal devices that you can do lots of things with, unlike an iPhone and unlike most Android phones, that you can take a device, you can put something on it, and you can stretch it beyond its original design. With a Mac, you can install any piece of software on it, and you can get on it and you can do things on it. This is what bothers me about the future, is that they're restricting our ability to do that. The walls in our walled gardens are ever getting higher. So things like this bring me joy.
I don't disagree with you. I get, for me, I guess it just seems like a lot of work for something that you probably would use a couple of times. I don't know, but it is quite cool engineering. I do appreciate that, and it's hard engineering.
But programming used to be a lot of work as well. People wrote programs to scratch an itch. This is one guy who's determined to do it and has done it, and mad props to the man, frankly, or woman.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Tell us about OpenAI making a phone.
OpenAI are going to make a phone?
You seem surprised by this.
Well, I thought they were making a Bluetooth speaker, which I was surprised they were doing, and that's what they think is going to change the world, but now coming out a year later. So now they're going to make a phone. I do wonder how OpenAI managed to do so much all at once, and the quality of it. They're separating from Microsoft, or they're not using Microsoft, the primaries we just discussed. They're making this Bluetooth speaker. They're now going to make a phone. They're pushing updates out left, right, and centre across all fronts. They can very much walk and chew gum at the same time, and they seem to be doing pretty well at the things they push out. And now they're going to go make a phone to launch in 2028. So do you think this is their long-term strategy roadmap of, we're going to do this Bluetooth speaker thing, and then that's going to lay the foundation? Have they actually got a long-term strategy?
Well, they're probably being guided by AI, and AI is probably helping them do some of these products and engineering choices, let's face it. So they've got a little bit of support there. How good it is, I'll leave the listener or viewer to decide. This feels like the Netflix strategy to me. Puts it on all of the things all of the time.
Yeah, that's true. And Netflix, they wrote the book on that, didn't they? Let's not worry about where we do it. Let's just do it everywhere.
Yeah, and it worked pretty well for them. My TV has got a Netflix button on it. Yours probably does too. I think it's just a default. Your actual TV remote control, Chris, not your Apple TV remote control.
Yeah, no, I don't know where those remotes are because I never use them.
Yeah, but the chances are most TVs come certainly with a Netflix button, often with a Prime or other button too, although some of them go out of date pretty quickly. However, I think this is an interesting move. It feels a bit Netflix. Also a little bit reeks of desperation, like Facebook tried to do a phone and it got nowhere, and
Amazon.
Just because you're a big company doesn't guarantee success in this kind of market. And I don't think your average phone buyer will. OpenAI is not a brand that resonates when it comes to a piece of hardware that you're relying for internet access. For that, you're going to want your Google, Apple, Samsung, who pick a manufacturer of choice that consumers are used to working with. There's a reason Samsung and Apple are the biggest manufacturers of mobile phones, because that's who consumers trust, to do that. Just because they slap OpenAI on the back of it, I'm not sure it's going to go anywhere. Most people know ChatGPT. They don't know OpenAI.
Yeah, no, agreed. ChatGPT, like you asked my kid, he just ChatGPT's everything. I think this is curious that what they can do, because it's not just building a phone that runs OpenAI, it's building a phone that can do your wallet, can run all these apps, because we rely on our phones for so much now, and you need that rich ecosystem. So they're going to have to partner with Android. Otherwise, it's going to be incredibly hard for them to have a breakout OS that doesn't run all the apps that people want, day one, can't pay for car parking. So it's interesting to see how that's going to work. Or is that just OpenAI with hooks in and you're just going to speak to it? So curious to see how this one's going to play out. But I'm not surprised they're doing it or looking at it. But I'd imagine this is an incredibly hard problem to solve.
Yeah, I agree. Again, though, they just want to get it out there, don't they?
They do seem to be throwing. Are they doing the co-pilot strategy of just do it everywhere? Which is the opposite probably of Netflix. Like Microsoft have done it in the wrong way, and Netflix absolutely nailed it.
Throw everything at the wall and see what sticks.
Yep.
this is something that I don't think is going to stick. This is a little article on The Verge. I just thought, how crazy is hardware gone? In the same way that I love the PlayStation thing, I hate this. So this is an article about Turtle Beach, maker of peripherals, gaming headsets, mice, keyboards, and other such things, where they've decided to stick a screen on their gaming mouse. And this just baffles me. Why anybody would want where your thumb goes on your typical mouse. Why anybody would want to look down and see a screen on their mouse is completely beyond me.
I would concur with that statement. I was looking at it. So it looks a bit like an MX Master mouse, and where your thumb normally rests, just above it, you'd have a screen, and you can make it programmable buttons. I personally have I don't really like a mouse with loads of buttons because I forget where they are and what they do. This just looks like a nightmare, in my opinion. It does not look that comfortable, and I just don't think I need a screen.
I mean, it looks a bit like a mini Stream Deck. So when you have that sort of Stream Deck where you've got programmable buttons in front of you with little OLEDs on, you could tap them, and I used to use it for launching podcasting and all the rest of it. However, I very quickly realised I don't need that complexity. You know, I'm quite good at having the windows I want, hitting record on the things or whatever it is I need to do and going. I don't need to tap one button that has got macros to do X, Y, and Z for me all the time. I mean, I guess if you're a gamer, you want to combine lots of keybinds so you can do some sort of crazy mouse jump, look, move, shoot thing, or start your recording if you're a streamer or something like that. But surely you've got all that set up already.
Yeah, this is clearly aimed at a younger demographic, I think. They also do keyboards with this, which you can kind of see on a keyboard. You kind of merge your keyboard and your Stream Deck into one. It's not a product that I'm looking for.
Yeah, interesting. The Verge article we've linked to says it looks a bit like a touch bar on a MacBook Pro, which I quite like.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that. And I quite like the concept of the touch bar on the MacBook Pro. It just didn't work in reality.
There was a very good discussion, I think it was between Jason Snell and Mike Hurley on Upgrade this week, about the shame that was the MacBook Pro, in the sense that apparently John Turnus, Apple's new CEO, is behind the touch bar. He was one of the sort of hardware guys that brought it there. And as a piece of hardware, it was amazing. But it was so poorly supported in software, we all just stopped using it. Imagine software guys had given us haptic clicks or some sort of feeling as we ran our fingers over for what it was doing, and added a little bit more to that, and then truly supported it in our applications. We might have been all over the touch bar.
Yeah, and that was the crazy thing with the touch bar. The software that came out on day one was the same software that was there on day 3000 or whenever it ended. It never really iterated or moved forward, which was disappointing, because that's the joy of a software screen. You can change what it displays. Like when your phone went from iOS 6 to 7, it looked very different and operated very differently. But you can do that with software, whereas it was really disappointing that for whatever reason the touch bar, they did version 1 and then they never really did a version 2 on it, where now it's out in people's hands and they had feedback that they really considered it, which was a shame.
Yeah, I'd go further and say it's more like going from BlackBerry to an iPhone, where you lost all that wasted space into the keyboard.
Yeah, fair.
Thank you. Horrible news for people in my business. UK Biobank, which is a repository of genetic sample and data from volunteers of about 500,000 people in the UK, has leaked. So it's all anonymized in the sense that it's not got your name and address and postcode and all that kind of stuff on it. However, as I've talked about before, there is a danger in this kind of data leaking, because you can join it to other pre-existing data sets with not an awful lot of information. So it's one of the reasons you shouldn't release data. Data should be kept in secure research environments. I understand the drive for organizations to do this, because you want to share, you want to be transparent. Maybe your setup is difficult, but it's problematic for precisely this reason, that if you do make these things accessible, then people will download them and people will try and link them and people will try and sell them, which according to this BBC News article is exactly what's happened. So if you are one of the 500,000 Biobank participants, this, as you would say, isn't great, is it? Because your potential genetic sample, blood pressure, responses to questionnaires, whatever else that's in the biobank potentially is accessible out there. Now, the chief executive of UK Biobank insists that they worked with the Chinese government and Alibaba, which is where this was listed on, hasn't actually been downloaded or bought, but it's still not great.
It isn't great, is it? And I do fear, though, we as a population in this world are just so used to data leaking out all the time everywhere. But this is not good. Like this data should have been stored in the super duper security thing that nobody can get into. So very frustrating that this has happened. And we're not instilling confidence in people that when they give over their data, that whatever that data may be, that it's safe and secure, and it's not going to be posted on the internet within a year or something. It's just not good at all.
I mean, it was 3 Chinese institutions that leaked this particular data. I'm not picking on them because they're Chinese. I'm just thinking, the vetting process for how these data are released, if you're going to release data, has to be absolutely crystal clear about what's happening to it. So it's a very important resource, UK Biobank. It has made discoveries around Alzheimer's disease and all sorts of things. So I think I don't want these kinds of leaks for people to lose confidence in the value of what is being done for research in this data. It's incredibly important. The researchers have large amounts of big data on all the aspects that UK Biobank covered. I think there's procedural things UK Biobank will have to learn as part of this, the sort of trust issues that has to go on between researchers, but fundamentally, as you say, the trust between the researcher and the participants has been kind of breached here, and I can't say UK Biobank aren't at fault, because we'll presumably have to wait for an investigation as to what actually happened here, but I think it's a real shame, and you're right, it's also a real shame that we've normalised leaks to this degree.
Yeah, agreed. But I also agree with you. Like you say, we need to collect this data to move forwards and to understand the world more. Whatever that data may be, there is a lot of work, and obviously you work in this field where you collect data, you analyse it, and then you can make decisions about where to go and learn from it. And so it's a real tricky one. This, but people are so used to data being leaked.
Yeah, which doesn't excuse it. It doesn't excuse it. These things shouldn't happen. And fundamentally, the researchers, the 3 institutions that leaked it, are the ones at fault. But you have to wonder what methodologies led them up to the point that they could do that in the first place. So it is what it is. But it's an interesting story and one to keep our eye on.
Agreed. Media. Let's do the media, because we haven't got anything for Car Corner.
We haven't. We never get anything for Car. We've rarely got anything for Car Corner. Taskmaster is back. I have managed to watch 3 of the 4 episodes so far. It's a really great season. Have you managed to watch it yet?
No. I have watched a lot this week, though. You've got to give me some credit.
You've watched some things.
For whatever reason, I just haven't got into Taskmaster. And I should start Taskmaster, because I'm assuming it drops 1 a week, and now would be a good time to get into it so I can keep up with the weekly cadence.
Yeah, you should. Catch up. 96% on Rotten Tomatoes, because we're back with Rotten Tomatoes, from the audience, because obviously there are no critics reviews for this. It's just an excellent show. Anybody who's not watching it is missing out. It's terrific.
Yeah, I agree, and I do want to see it, because I think the cast looks good. So, okay, I'll put it on the list.
And I will say, Joanna Page is absolutely knocking it out of the park this season. She is phenomenal.
She's good. She always comes across quite well, to be fair to her.
No, she's really good, and she keeps having little anecdotes about Swansea as well, which I really appreciate.
Okay, fair enough. All right, I'll have to get on with it.
I have been watching Maul Shadow Lord, which is a cartoon. Go me, I'm such a grown-up man. It's a cartoon based on Darth Maul, who, if you've seen any of the Star Wars films, the prequel Star Wars films, The Phantom Menace, he famously appeared. Sorry, spoilers if you haven't seen it all the way through. He gets cut in half, and that's kind of the end of poor Darth Maul in the movies. However, in cartoon form, he's had a lot more life. He did pop up at the end of the Solo movie. If you've seen the Solo Star Wars movie.
I have. I can't remember it though.
Yeah, he pops up right at the end as sort of the master of the criminal syndicate. Even though he's been cut in half, he managed to survive it. This is kind of the story of him building that criminal syndicate. It's really well done. The animation is beautiful. I would criticize some of the earlier sort of Star Wars cartoons, the Clone Wars things, for looking a bit basic. They've done a phenomenal job of this. You can see from this still right at the top how good it looks, and sort of the depth of animation quality they've got from reflections in characters' eyes, of lightsabers and things like that. There's some beautiful matte paintings and things like that that's going on in the background. It's just a lovely looking thing. It's very well written. The voice acting is off the charts. Quite interesting stories. They're only short. They're like 22 minutes long, so your kids would probably love them. And you can see both the critics and the audience are loving a bit of Darth Maul Shadow Lord.
Yeah, that's a really good rating, isn't it? Fair play.
Yeah, it's a good show. It's quite compelling, I got to say. It's really well done. So, yeah, I've been enjoying that.
Cool.
Also been enjoying Daredevil Born Again Season 2. Daredevil was a Netflix show. It was the original sort of Marvel television thing. When Marvel decided to centralize all their stuff, one of the casualties of that was Daredevil. It was probably the best reviewed of all the Marvel shows. There was a Punisher one. There was a Luke Cage one. There was a... I can't remember the other one. There was a few of them, and Daredevil was known for its sort of one take fight sequences in corridors and things like that. It was really well done. And Charlie Cox, who plays Daredevil, is fantastic. They're really knocking it out of the park again with season 2 of Daredevil Born Again. It's phenomenal. And you might recognize him, but Vincent D'Onofrio plays the Kingpin character. If you've seen Full Metal Jacket, he was Private Pyle in Full Metal Jacket, and a few other things as well. He's a terrific actor. Charlie Cox is great in it. It's an extremely well written show, tightly scripted, some great action sequences in it. Thoroughly enjoying it. Daredevil Born Again.
Stop giving me more stuff that sounds interesting.
It's really interesting. Over to you. Black Bag, which I've never heard of.
You probably have. So I've actually watched a few films. I was away this week, and it's amazing that when you're away from your family for 3 or 4 nights, you actually can go to the hotel room and watch a film a night. So I've done pretty well this week. So I watched a film called Black Bag. So this has got Michael Fassbender in it and Kate Blanchett in the key roles, and it's directed by Steven Soderbergh. It felt quite Steven Soderbergh-esque. Probably the weakest film I've watched this week. Looking at the reviews, like the critics loved it, 96%, but the viewers 70%. For me, it was a little slow. It was quite cool, very small set of characters, which I liked. You kind of get dropped into the story, and then they unwind a little bit of the story, and tell you how they got there, kind of thing. I thought it was really well done, but just a little on the slow side, if I'm being honest, for me. But it's not a long film either. But it was quite cool, good performances. For me, Michael Fassbender looked a bit like the guy out The Killer, which was a film on Netflix, and he just didn't seem different enough. He was a lot smarter in this one, but just looked very similar the way he came across and was styled. But no, it was okay if you've got an hour and a half to spend and you like these guys. It also had Pierce Brosnan in it, and a guy who plays Cormoran Strike in the Strike novels that J.K. Rowling's written, which I wasn't as keen on TV shows, but I think he's a very good actor. He's Tom Burke. He was good in it. So it was okay. It was a good hour and a half, but just a little slow paced for me.
Last seen in Mad Max Furiosa, I think Tom Burke, he appeared in that.
I'll take your word for it.
Good. Well, better film than the critics received it as, but not a patch on Mad Max Fury Road. Yeah, I got to say, the ratings, the audience ratings don't make it seem all that great. And it is one of those that seems to have quite an imbalance between what the critics think and what the audience think.
It is well shot. It's just quite slow paced, and I think I was expecting something just a little quicker paced, but that was maybe me.
Speaking of audience and critics imbalances, Nuremberg.
I really quite enjoyed this film. I don't know a lot about the Nuremberg trials. Obviously, I knew they happened, but I didn't know a lot about them. So this is with Russell Crowe, and I'm going to forget the gentleman's name.
Rami Malek.
Malek. He's good. I'm not sure if Russell Crowe was 100% cast and played a really good role. Rami Malek, his psychiatrist for Hermann Göring, was, I don't know if he was the right person. I was disappointed because I really like him as an actor. But on the whole, good film, well paced, really interesting. Got to the meat and bones quite quickly. I think they actually, obviously they used a bit of storytelling to maybe speed up the events, because when I read a bit more about it on Wikipedia, it transpired it happened over a much longer time frame. But really well done, recreated that era of literally just as the war ended, and the trials that they went through. But I thought it was a really good film. I've been wanting to watch this for a long time. I don't know why the critics were so harsh, so they gave it a 71% rating, and the viewers gave it a 95% rating. But really interesting piece of, period of war, end of wartime, as it came to a close. But yeah, I'd recommend watching it. I think it's worth a watch, and it's good to know a bit more about that part of history.
I might check it out myself. I mean, I do know a little bit about the Nuremberg trials, not in vast detail. He's an interesting actor, Russell Crowe, because he can be phenomenal and he can be absolutely dreadful. I'm thinking the Robin Hood film he was pretty poor in. But then as Jack Aubrey in the Master and Commander films, absolutely perfectly cast, as he was as Gladiator.
I liked him in The Insider as well when he did that Michael Mann film.
Yep.
In the early 2000s. I thought in here he was fantastic. I generally thought he was really good, and it was nice to see him come back and do something.
LA Confidential is just perfect in.
Agreed.
And Rami Malek, wonderful in The Hacker. I didn't feel he was perfectly cast in the Bond film, No Time to Die. I didn't think he was the best Bond bad guy, but again, a really solid, good actor. Anyway.
He did a good Freddie Mercury.
Freddie Mercury. The Running Man.
Finally then, to top out the week, The Running Man. Got around and watched it. Mixed feelings on this. I quite like the original Running Man with Arnie. I thought that I was enjoying the Running Man quite a lot with Glenn Powell. I thought he was well cast, actually, to be fair. I thought it was directed okay by Edgar Wright, but it didn't feel like an Edgar Wright movie. Do you know what I mean? It didn't have the usual choppy, fast cuts. Some good music, to be fair. He usually does do a good soundtrack, but some of the soundtrack didn't seem to sit with the world we were living in. And then at the end, it becomes a Alpine advert for a car, and that really annoyed me. I was like, the product just didn't sit right. Do you know what I mean? It like they shoehorned this product in there, and it just felt a bit wrong. And they were really going for an advert, and I was a bit disappointed with that at the end.
It's a weird one, isn't it? I failed to engage with it emotionally, I think is probably the best way I can say. I like the director. I thought Glenn Powell was well cast. I thought everybody was doing quite well. I totally agree with you about the advert at the end. I'm told it's closer to Stephen King's book than the original one was, certainly. I have a lot of time for the original Arnie one, and I have a huge amount of time for Edgar Wright, but this just felt a bit flat.
Yeah, I was expecting... something Baby Driver-esque by Edgar Wright. And I loved Baby Driver. And I know it came out at a controversial time with Kevin Spacey. Literally, as the film came out, that's when Kevin Spacey's world blew up. But that film is fantastic. So well put together. The music was perfect. It didn't feel like you were watching an advert for anything. Whereas this was the opposite, sadly. And I enjoyed it. And I think 60 to 70% is the ratings. I think that is fair. And I would watch it again quite happily, I think, because I did generally enjoy it. But it wasn't the 80-90% film I thought I was walking into.
I mean, the irony is it's about the sort of apex end of capitalism, The Running Man, isn't it? That's what happens if you just let corporations run wild. You end up with them taking over the world, and then they stick an Alpine advert into the end, and you're like, okay.
Yeah, I guess if you looked at it that way philosophically, that would make more sense.
Got to think about your movies, man.
Yeah, but I did enjoy it, and I would watch it again. But it wasn't the Edgar Wright movie I wanted it to be, because I thought Edgar Wright would really do something cool with it.
100% agree. A movie I watched, I enjoyed far more than I thought I was going to. It's called War Machines. This is a Netflix film. It stars Alan Ritchson. It's, how can I describe this? I think it's Predator, but with a big stompy robot rather than a scary invisible alien. It's probably the best way I can talk about it.
Okay. Predator with a big stompy robot. Okay, that's quite a good analogy. I've not seen it, but this came across my radar, but like I say, I haven't watched it. Is this one I should go and watch?
I think if you've got, an hour and a half on a train and you just want a slightly gory, sharp, well-written, good-looking film, this will fit the bill. It's not Predator. It's not 100% trying to be Predator. It does kind of go off and be its own thing. Alan Ritchson he's an interesting actor. You probably haven't seen him much, just other than the Guy Ritchie film about the Second World War, where he plays the Danish Special Forces guy.
Don't think I've seen it.
Have you not seen that? I'm sure you've mentioned that you've seen that. Anyway, he's in it with Henry Cavill.
I know the film you're on about, but I haven't seen that. I can't remember what it's called.
The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare or something like that.
That's the one.
Yeah.
That is on my radar because I usually do like a Guy Ritchie film.
Yeah, it's not a great film. However, Alan Ritchson is Reacher and plays Reacher perfectly. But he's a very underrated actor. He's good in this. I enjoyed it more than I thought. I can't say more than that. I enjoyed it more than I thought it was. And considering I'm quite anti-military, particularly American military stuff at the moment, I think they do a cracking job. And the other thing I like about this is they pretend that it's Colorado, but they actually film it in New Zealand, and it looks phenomenal.
Okay.
Yeah, interesting film. Some good moments in it, and well done. And props to Alan Ritchson. He's on his tear at the moment.
And how would you rate it? Because it had poor 60-ish% ratings all around.
I think it's a 70% film. I think it's fair, but sometimes a 70% film is what you're expecting, and I got what I was expecting, or better than I was expecting.
That's the difference between The Running Man. I think we were expecting a higher film, and we went into it.
Yeah.
And then you watched it, and it's like, oh, that's a bit disappointing. But you know what? Sometimes you want a 70% film. It's a bit of action, bit of fun. Okay, maybe I'll give that one.
Totally, I'd give it a whirl. Main show.
Let's do it.
So I guess, as is our tradition, we better have a look at the Apple results.
Gives us some grass that reach for the sky.
And I know we could just summarize this by going, Apple made a lot of money, because that's what our typical report. But let's look at how much money Apple made this quarter. So this is their second quarter. This is the post-Christmas one. So this isn't where you've got anything stellar going on. You've got no new iPhones introduced. You'd only have the tail end of the MacBook Neo in here, I guess, and you've got trade wins, as they call them, ongoing with the UK, with the global economy. Fair?
You did lie, though. They do have a new iPhone that they've announced. They announced the 17E in this period.
That doesn't really count.
I agree with you, but I just thought I'd put it in there so we were factually correct.
So the top line, Apple today announced financial results for its fiscal 2026, second quarter ending March 28, 2026. The company posted quarterly earnings revenue of $112.2 billion, up 17% year over year. So that's the same quarter last year. Diluted earnings per share was $2.01, up 22% year over year.
I mean, that's cracking numbers, isn't it? That's just on its own. That's insane.
It is. So this earnings call is Tim and the chief financial officer sit there. I believe John Turnus was in there as well, sort of for the first time to talk about these things.
Yeah, and it makes sense that given that Apple never normally pre-announce something, they have pre-announced John Turnus stepping up. And didn't we say the comment like Tim wants this to be like the textbook case of how you do good transitions? And they've teed it really well. They've leaked the article. They've announced it. They've brought him into the first earnings call, just more to make a comment rather than to actually present, which is the right thing to do, right? He's not in that position yet. So they're really easing him in, and the city's not had a wobble. This unknown person coming in to run the company. Fantastic. So yeah, he got to say a couple of comments.
He did. Let's jump to Jason Snell's charts because they're
Yeah, let's see some pictures.
So because we can talk about some pretty pictures. So total Apple revenue is the first one. We show this and talk about this sort of every time, every quarter. The black line is sort of the average, and then they've got their quarterly things going back to. It doesn't actually say how many quarters, but that would be quite handy. It's about 4 or 5 years worth, isn't it?
But so it goes back to the tail end of 21 is what you're looking at, because the first quarter he names is the year. It's super interesting though how that line just keeps climbing, and obviously the tail end of this quarter that they've just reported on is when they announced all the cheaper end products. So they're clearly shifting a lot. I'm saying cheaper end in scare quotes because obviously you're still paying £500 for an iPhone and things, but they're still climbing. Like overall, obviously goes up and down some quarters, but the net result is that line is climbing upwards.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's not the hockey stick, as they call it, as they like to talk about in sort of business terms. Since Tim Cook came in, all he's done is make money. And I know the criticism of is he's not a great products guy, but he's a great, money making guy and operations guy, and that's not surprising. I think Tim would be happy with that description of himself. I still can't get over last quarter. 143.8 billion in the last quarter, down to 111.2 billion in this quarter. But compared to the quarter two the year before, where it was only 95.4, that is some solid growth, isn't it? I mean, that really is impressive for what should be one of your quieter quarters over the year.
Especially when you think everybody's already got an iPhone, an iPad, a MacBook, whatever, some AirPods. They are delivering stellar performance. And it's the holiday, it's the quarter after the holiday where everybody's usually spent and people are usually reining in their spending, right? But they're doing a good job.
And everything's more expensive.
Yeah, you're right there. Everything, and it's not just Apple stuff that's more expensive. Everything is more expensive.
Yeah, so we've got our year-over-year change. Let's do our usual look at revenue by category, and the dwarfing everything as usual is the iPhone at 51%. The smaller elements of this pie chart, the iMac and the iPad, I don't feel like they've changed a lot over the last few times we're looking at. We'll look at these in more details in a minute. Is your dog around, Chris, by any chance?
Yeah, I apologise for listeners of my dog jumping against a fence right next to where I record. But no, you're right. The Mac and the iPad kind of trade percentage points between sort of 6 and 8 to 9%, and it yings and yangs a little bit.
Yeah, it does. I'm going to scroll down and try and find the more interesting things. I hope they've given these. So gross margin is up, of course it is. I mean, products versus services is an interesting one because you get these spikes in the products, which, let's face it, iPhone releases. That's what causes these.
iPhone and Christmas cause the product spike, like together, because people get a new iPhone at Christmas.
But that's the same quarter, isn't it? That's the
Yeah.
So it may as well be the same thing. Is the demand for the iPhone is what makes people rush in and buy them. Maybe a little bit if there's some amazing new thing in an Apple Watch. But let's face it, based on the pie chart, it's the iPhone that drives that the product spikes in that. But this services line fascinates me because it is just a money making machine.
Yeah, it's only going one way. it's probably great for the finance team because it's just a smooth line that's just slowly going up. Whereas, as we've said, the hardware line's very spiky in essence. So it's fantastic numbers, isn't it? I mean, literally, Tim's handing John Turner. So here you go. This is some amazing, backbone I'm giving you here. All you've got to do is carry on doing this amazing stuff I'm doing.
Yeah. There's also an Apple regional year-over-year growth. China's quite interesting in this chart, isn't it? You think you had that spiky in China when obviously probably the gold iPhone cost this. I don't remember.
That was the end of 21. I don't know what came out towards the end of 21.
So massive growth in 21. It dropped down, and you've got another period of massive growth over sort of quarter 4 last year up to quarter 2 this year in China. And the European area has overtaken the Americas.
Yeah, that's weird, isn't it?
That is weird considering our current feelings about, American products.
And also Americans wanting American products. Like you'd have thought that would have gone up as well. So very interesting.
If we look at year-over-year iPhone revenue change, this is good because we get into the sort of other products now. The iPhone is, it's more up than down, isn't it? I think it's probably fair.
They've had some stellar releases though. Like I know the iPhone's very iterative, but you see a lot of 17 Pros around, a lot of 17s. It's the phone, it's had a good review, right? There's no reason not to buy it. If you're going to go and get a new phone, you're going to get the latest one generally.
The thing is, I struggle when I see particularly phones and cases, with the exception of your orange model. I can't really tell other models of the iPhone apart. I mean, an iPhone 17 looks the same as a 16. I don't remember which orientation the cameras are. There used to be, if they were straight up and down, it was one, and then a diagonal, you could tell them. I can't tell in most cases what's what. I see 3 cameras, I know it's a Pro. That's about it. That's all I've got.
Yeah, the 17 Pro is obviously distinguishable, irrelative of the colour, because you've got the big lump across the back. The Air, but you're right, the regular 17, can't remember.
Yep, no idea. I think they're slightly more pastel, but stick it in a case, I haven't got a clue.
And they are literally all in a case.
Yeah. So, but if you look back at this, since quarter 2 last year, all the iPhone has done is grow.
And big numbers.
Yeah, 2%. That's kind of what, if you look back at this, 9s, 5s, 2s, 3s, is 1 to 10% generally, and less than 5%, year on year. The last through 13, 6, 23, 22, these are big numbers they're putting over in the iPhone.
Yeah. So is the average price of the iPhone going up? Is that what we're saying?
Maybe. Particularly when you compare it to the other products. So, Mac revenue is fairly stable. We've done 7 to 9% effectively over the last few years.
Yep, no, agreed. The Mac is fairly stable in the backbone, isn't it?
And some would argue the most important product Apple makes, because you need a Mac to make software for all their other products. So, go the Mac, frankly.
Go the Mac.
Revenue change is what we talked about. Those years where it sort of vastly goes down. I'd like to know what year that is. Presumably that's, that's after the Mac, the butterfly keyboard.
It's 23.
Yeah.
That's Apple Silicon era. Maybe everybody bought new Macs because there was a big surge when the Silicon first came out, and then
COVID.
Everybody warmed on it. So that's what that is there. I think everybody's already bought a Mac and is warmed on it. But the Mac and the iPad are really hard because they've never really had that annual cycle, whereas the phone comes out every September and has done for the last 15 years. Whenever they started moving to the September cadence. So the other products are a lot harder, I think, to assess quarter on quarter and year on year.
I agree with you. I think this is a post-COVID thing, that people bought Macs in COVID. It coincided with Apple Silicon. You had that massive change. So you had a huge amount of year-over-year Mac revenue change. People realized how good the Macs were and the Apple Silicon was, and they didn't need to replace the laptop every year as they might have been doing in the Intel years, because you could fry an egg on some of those Intel chips and the batteries would expire really, really quickly, and say nothing of the butterfly keyboard. So you had that sort of pent-up demand. And then you had a solid period of growth where they were getting better year on year. And, I think the M5 is maybe making people jump on as well a little bit now. So I think that's good for it. The iPad, I've got nothing good to say particularly about the iPad. I think it's a pointless product. To this day, I think it's a point. Even though my thing of the week this week is going to be an iPad recommendation. I really struck.
I love my iPad.
Yeah, but why?
I don't know. I just love it.
What does it do that your phone really doesn't and your Mac doesn't? It's just they've made a product wedged into a very small gap that we've all just accepted as being, oh, it's fine because it's going to be the next wave of computing. I think we're all beginning to accept it's not the next wave of computing.
They haven't iterated on it enough software-wise. I 100% agree.
The services graph amuses me no end. It's just that same continual increase from 17.5% back in Q3, whatever, 22, up to 30
No, 17.5 billion.
billion. So that's revenue. God, I got to read my titles. My graph's a little better.
No,
From 17.5 billion up to 31 billion in this quarter, and that's just our subscription, app fees, advertising, all just going into one bucket and then making lots of cash out of us.
And in that graph, for whatever reason, Q3-4 in 22 is the only dip they've had, and it's not a big dip.
No, it's not a big dip, and you can see that, in the services revenue change. But what an amazing run that the services have turned in. You can understand really when they go, let's put ads in maps. Yeah, but look at this line. We can make it go up even faster and more hardcore if we do that.
You could say that's one argument.
I didn't say it was a good argument. I just said it was.
No, agreed. But it is one argument. It's one way of looking at it. I would beg to differ.
My argument is they're actually watering the product down and making those of us who are on the fence about buying Apple products and things for the future, they're actually harming their longer term.
I would concur with that statement.
Yeah. Wearable and home. There's not a lot to be said about this. It's a fairly static line, really, isn't it? We're sort of between 8 and 11% effectively going back over the years. The jumps are probably new AirPods more than Apple Watches.
I would agree. I think tricky line though. So you've got home in here. So let's take home. That's Apple TV and HomePods. Get released on very odd cadences. Apple TV's 4 years old at this point. HomePod's probably 3 years old. Then you've got wearables like watches in there which come out but haven't really changed much in the last 3 years. They've got very static, and then obviously you've got AirPods, which is the big one here that is probably, even though they're relatively cheap, probably driving the numbers. And then don't forget you've got all your cables, probably cases in here as well. So all of that cumulatively probably does add up. Yeah,
it's not big swings though. Revenue changes over the years. It is between that sort. I mean, it's interesting. I think there's more negatives in here than there are on many of the other lines. You do see those drops where they do sort of drop the ball when it comes to some of these products. But I mean, the summary of all this is Apple makes all of the money, which we already knew.
They do make all of the money, which when they nickel and dime, it gets even more frustrating.
Yeah, that's why it's annoying when they do go and stick ads in maps, or they do leave some product lying around forever. That it gets quite frustrating. But well done, Apple. They had to be fair. And my summary of this is, Apple hardware remains incredible. Apple software, which is problematic, and that's what's causing a lot of problem. But Apple management and their decisions about what they're going to charge you for, where they're going to work with developers, and all that kind of stuff, is the sort of unknown here. Could you imagine a world in which the Vision Pro, which is one of the wearables categories, was actually supported by developers and came at a sensible cost? I think, that category would have maybe exploded a little bit there as well, as they added something truly novel into it. And I've dropped the ball on that.
Yeah, agreed. It's a shame.
It is a shame. Should we do a thing of the week?
Go on then. No, you're going to do app of the week.
Oh, app of the week. I'm confused because I think you put your thing. We got the categories a lot wrong. So.
Oh yeah, we have. Sorry, that's my fault.
So app of the week this week is the VLC player for iPadOS and iOS. And there's a very specific reason for this. I use Jellyfin as my home server. It works really well. It works well on my Apple TVs. I can stream things on it in the browser, etc., etc., etc. And about 6 months ago, they added a download option for iPadOS. So I went, oh, that's really helpful, actually. So I went to Jellyfin. I downloaded a bunch of stuff. I got on my airplane. I went to watch an episode of Taskmaster, and it wouldn't play.
Oh.
So, because it literally did what it said it was going to do, and it downloaded it into the Files app on my iPad, and I didn't have VLC installed, so I couldn't watch it. So that was slightly annoying. So when I landed, I immediately installed VLC, and it worked perfectly. So actually, the two things work together perfectly well. It's just I wish I'd known that first.
Yeah, so I do use Jellyfin, but I didn't realise it had the download option, so I will take a look at that. But I have been manually copying some files onto my iPad for this very reason of shows that I've got I want to watch. And VLC is very good.
VLC is very good. And the really nice thing about it was how fast Jellyfin did it. I used to use Plex, and Plex, because it would transcode it to fit your iPad before it would download off Plex, it was a very slow download. Whereas I downloaded about 5 seasons of Taskmaster in the space of about 20 minutes. So I was really quite impressed with that. But just little note to self, download VLCs on your iPad so you've got something to watch it with.
Also, test that it works before you fly.
I just assumed it would work because it was used to Plex. And assumptions kill, don't they? So that was the thing. It wasn't the end of the world. I played a lot of Slay the Spire.
It's a good flight.
It was a great flight. The flight just flew, literally.
Fair enough.
Uh,
Shall I do thing of the week?
Do thing of the week, which might be app of the week, but could be thing of the week. Yeah.
So on my recent iPod binge, I went and acquired an iPod Nano 7th generation, which I'm holding up for Rod. It is actually, I think they call it green, but it's actually the citrus colour that you see on the recent MacBook Neos. Looks quite cool. And do you know what? I shared this with some friends last night. We just sat around and I said, check out this iPod. And they both said, wow, Apple used to make really cool, small hardware. And you pick this thing, it's tiny. I don't know what to liken it to, but like 2 sticks of gum maybe, but thinner.
Matchbox?
Next to each other.
Thin Matchbox?
Very thin Matchbox. Yeah. But it is really cool. It's very fast screen. Not many apps on it. My son was like, how do I install apps on it? I was like, you don't install apps on it. Like iPods came and you didn't really do a lot with them. But I got this one specifically because it's got Bluetooth built in. And so I can take it to the gym and put my big hands on and Bluetooth it. But it is cool. It's a really nice little device. Annoyingly, it doesn't sync notes. That's the one thing I'm missing, because some iPods you could put notes, you could drag a note into the hard drive of the iPod, and then you could look at text files, which is quite helpful. I like it because I write down what weights I do at the gym. That's the only reason I want the note, because I forget. But really cool. It does audiobooks as well. What is weird in modern macOS, though, you have to do some things in iTunes, some things in books, and I guess podcasts, but I haven't explored that yet. And then it will sync them onto the iPod. One bug I have noticed though in recent Mac Finder is if you try and format your iPod, it always crashes. Obviously, not many people do that. But do you know what? I'm using 15, 16 years old iPod Nano, and I've got the iPod Classic I bought the other week, and it all works. Like, old tech still works. Fair play to Apple for keeping the functionality going, and they rewrote it into the Finder. They didn't have to do that, but they did, and it's unlike Apple to do that. So, cool little device. It's brought me a little bit of joy.
I think it's super cool. It's what I was saying about keeping old things going and the joy of computers for keeping them going. Is it got a home button?
Yep.
That's amazing.
So, and it does have a lot of cues from the iPhone. So this, I was trying to see what the date is. Oh, it doesn't say the date on the back, but it's like a 2010, 2011 product. So it's post iPhone. So the OS has got some elements of pinstriping and gradients and skeuomorphism that you'd have seen.
So,
but,
no, I was just going to say, it's incredible that the battery in it is still, given the age of the product, hasn't expanded and smashed the screen out.
Battery's pretty good.
It's cool that Apple used to make that sort of diversity of device, I think. When in our modern age, as we are increasingly distracted by what's on our phones, these devices that are sort of single-focused, and it's why I was quite enjoying the fact that you couldn't get notes on it, really, that it's a music player. Let it play the music in as efficient and as good sounding a way as possible, and it's letting you do that, and I think that's terrific.
And it's a read-only device. Like, there's no way of putting data into this, but it's cool. I love it, and I'm trying to get to the world where I can go out for a dog walk and not take a connected device with me.
I think it's great.
It's a crazy world we're going to live in.
It surely can support podcasts, because that's where podcast comes from, was the iPod podcasts.
Yes, it does have the podcast app, but I guess I have to use Apple Podcasts, and I haven't ventured down there. It's also got, which I had forgotten about, the ability that if you plug your headphones in with a cable, you can use it as a radio, like an FM radio.
I'd forgotten they did that.
Which is quite cool. I just think it's cool. It's a good bit of innovation, but look how small it is. Just what a lovely device just to hold, have it as a fidget toy. Really nicely made. Oh, also, it's got side buttons.
Yeah.
You push the middle button and it pauses your track.
The last iPod Nano I had a Fat Nano, the little wide one, which could also play video. And I remember encoding a couple of videos for my youngest daughter, so she'd be able to watch things on trips to Scotland and things like that on that tiny little screen on the Fat Nano.
It's a tiny screen. That's the 3rd gen Nano.
Yeah, I had one of them. I also had a couple of shuffles. I can't remember why I got. Do you remember the one that would clip on to your shirt? It looked like it was a tiny little clip on.
Yeah, that was cool.
I got posted one of them for some reason. I think it was some recall or something that Apple had, and they posted me one out for free. And I just left it. Okay. I left it sitting in a drawer for ages before I eventually tried it. I really liked my shuffle. It's when I properly started engaging with podcasts. That original shuffle that did look like a stick of gum. It only had a play and pause button on the front of it in advance, and a USB connector when you took the cap off. It had a lanyard you could wear around your neck for reasons.
And it was a big old shuffle though, because you couldn't always get it in the USB port.
Yeah, it was a chunky boy. That's cool, Chris. I thoroughly endorse your thing of the week.
Yeah, I'm enjoying my iPod renaissance. And there's a lot out there on Vinted and eBay here in the UK. So if anybody gets into it, you have to shop around, and they're not cheap. This was about £70, but I thought I could spend £70 on a load of rubbish. Actually, I'm going to get something I want to play with and enjoy.
Good show. I think we call that a show, Chris.
I think so. So if anyone wants to get in contact with us, Rod is at g5maniac@marston.scot. I am at _CGP at marston.social. You can watch on YouTube by going to wakefromsleep.com and clicking on the YouTube link, or you can drop us an email, wakefromsleep@protonmail.com.
Talk to you next week, Chris.